why not see them as intellectuals as they are? Only then you have to know what they are doing, how they are acting as intellectuals. And then it's true, it's not, we are not making scientific debates every day. We are making choices, but we have intense debate on the choices every day again, and we are organizing conferences. So your question should be, as scientist, how can I intervene in that specific form of debate to making choices? And then general views are very welcome, but you have to put them in our intellectual arena. And our intellectual arena is very large. It's going every day, but it's also specifically organized, all kinds of meetings, etc.
I wonder whether you can have just the same subject of theory when you have it in opposition.
Well, I think my concept of theory doesn't differ from Ariane's. I think that the idea that there are general debates on what public administration is, how it functions, what is its place in society. There are general themes, and I don't think there are general mechanisms, or general patterns, or general laws, or general causal relationships. Even the concept of causal relationship in the social science is problematic to a certain extent. So what I do in my practice is, my research practice, is to acknowledge that, and so that makes reflection on the public administration experience as a methodology, as an alternative or an attractive way of doing research, and an alternative way of connecting the general debates, not the general theories, but the general debates, because it's all positions in a debate that are supported by data or supported by other data, and that's, I want to contribute to the debate from the observations I do, and I have specific scientific criteria for doing the observations. But it's kind of it's like Michel de Montaigne reflecting on his experiences. I think that could be an interesting way of looking at public administration. Is looking at the administrative experience, or reflecting on the administrative experience, or reflecting on the governance experience from that point of view, instead of trying to establish causal relationships from a social scientific perspective, which are always probabilistic, which always have to be contextualized to understand what happens in a specific situation, and which do not in the end lead to hard knowledge. That is a shame. I would like to have an ideal social world in which there could be hard knowledge possible, unmediated by language, unmediated by culture. But I think that's not the situation. And what I do in my research practice is acknowledge that fact and try to rethink how academic research can contribute to an understanding, to a field of knowledge or a body of knowledge. And that doesn't rule out a normal scientific criterion. If I observe something, I make transparent why I observe something, what I observe, and how I observe, and what are the limitations. I mean, that's normal quality criteria for doing research. It's just that I don't think that middle range theories contribute a lot, both to public administration practice and in the end neither to public administration science. So it's a quest for an alternative research strategy that acknowledges the limitations of social sciences.
But when you write a paper, do you write a paper on the phenomenon you observe or you work on, or on the process of interaction you try to manage? What is the subject of your paper when you write a paper about this kind of research? What is the topic of that?
Yeah, in this paper I use only one illustration. I can name numerous, but those illustrations are primarily content-driven. So this is just a paper reflecting on the research methodology and based on one illustration. But my primary aim is, if I do a specific research, for example, evaluating the trusted third-party policy in the Netherlands right now, then I want to contribute to the debate on which policies, or which policy styles, or which policy regimes are effective in what context, and what does that mean. So that's a general debate, or a general theory, you can say, or a general strive for debate that I would then like to contribute to, based on a specific experience in a specific context. Because every context is unique, and at the same time every context is not unique, because there are some patterns. But the mix between the two, that's what interests me. And a reflective and interactive methodology, for me at least, contributes to that mix.
We've talked in terms of dichotomies, and then of course when you start to talk in terms of think in terms of dichotomies, you automatically have hybrid. You always discover them and stay first market, and we discover some things in between. Well, hybrid, we think they're crazy people, or institutions or whatever, but usually we create them through our thinking scheme. And if I relate it to the topic that I had yesterday as well, we had this cathedral, which the academics on the top floor, we had this very closed administration, so I think that's a simplification. Obviously, there is your traditional distinction between applied and fundamental research. And that is changing because you get more interactions on both ends. You get those hybrids. And you hear in a debate all kind of examples of that. Once we started to the practitioner who's doing more intellectual work, the think tank which is being starting to play a role, the type of research methodology that you try to follow in the commissioned research. So what you see, if you start to think about it and look at it, and when I was listening, it was also something to that, when there was a distinction being made between that's France, we talked to the cultural differences, and that's more different in Germany than in England. I was really thinking what to say, but then Henk came in, and that's typically the situation for the Dutch, because there the situation is probably the most hybrid at the moment that you can think about. To such an extent, that's probably not hybrid anymore. But it's a species in itself, and we do not know how to think about it, because it happens on both sides. I mean, I know people that take a strict anti-applied attitude in the Netherlands, and because of that, are having a huge impact on practitioners. And the other way, there are several, not reflective, but intellectual practitioners in a way that have found their place. And so you see something of a scale. And I was wondering, and this was a specific question, and to others probably the most experienced in working on various countries, whether this is something that could be turned into a feasible. I mean, of course, if you throw a lot of money on it, everything is doable, but in a feasible way that could be explored, whether there is some kind of development going on. And in that sense, that is being researched for. If you have a group of people taking responsibility for that, use these kind of concepts and explore it, just like we did it in the beginning with what is the development of public administration programs. The West, what is it with respect to Eastern Europe, and this is more the whole topic of dissemination, transfer, and conceptualizing. So that's what when I was listening more to the discussion and having my own evaluation of it, what I saw as a possibility, but that's what I think is a question I would like to ask what would be your opinion about it. Will that be organized? How will that be organized? What should we have to do? Is it?
Well,
How would you
I'm not
conceptualize?
aware of any study,
No, it's not that. That's obvious. No, I agree with that.
I think from my perspective that would be desirable, and I guess this network could be a good starting point because we already do have a lot of hybrids here and practitioners and academics talking to each other, I think.
Could you tell us how you would conceptualize, based on your paper, how would you conceptualize such a research question, such as Leo mentioned?
Well, I mean, I think there should be several dimensions. I mean, one dimension would obviously be to look at career paths of civil servants, and I think there's already a lot of research out there must have been done, but it would need secondary analysis under this new question. The other issue is how is research funded in different countries? What is the interaction with practitioners in terms of applied research which is being funded? I'm sure, I mean, there are statistics about that. That would be very difficult to find this out. And ideally, I think that kind of quantitative analysis should be complemented by interviews with key policy advisors, think tanks like in the UK, and a number of important think tanks.
Isn't the most interesting how practices are influenced? Funding, innovation funding, interactions, it still doesn't say everything about how practice really is influenced by science.
Well, I think that's why you need the empirical research to need to do some interviews.
Would you agree to that fighting and resource questions?
Yeah, I think it's needed, but I would be doubtful. And probably it will be the statistics, you need them. Just like you were saying yesterday about starting to read all those kind of material, and you do a lot, it doesn't give you much clue. There's the problem, that's why I raise it here in this group, is that you need to go a little bit more into the system. And, we need people first to identify, you're right, how to influence. First is what are the channels of influence, and that seems to be what are you looking for now. And that's what I get out of this debate, that there is no institutionalization in a way of these kind of relationships and interactions through which then this communication, therefore, miscommunication, by the way, because that's also what you were saying, there's a lot of images going on between academics, and that's a familiar, I would say, public administration topic as well. But there's a lot of channels where communication, miscommunication is taking place, and therefore influencing on them. So I would start somewhere there to try to make something of an inventory of the type of channels that would require indeed the help of some people in various countries, just like what we're doing now, to think through what is it. Is it things that from your experience, tremendous insight, saying that's help. There's to be a more practical approach in that sense. What Thomas type of approach also to that kind of thing. And perhaps personally I would like to link it then to a more generalized concept, because that comes my belief then again in the use of theory also to back. But those concepts can be derived, I think, from current literature. The main question is, can you put together a network or a team of people who are willing to invest in that and bring in perhaps other people which are willing to contribute. And it should be definitely low cost in terms of particularly if time involved, particularly so that you get practitioners involved. But that's what I was also meaning by managing evolution. So in a way, yeah, we go along with it. Would like to find a way that it is getting more direct indeed at the practical level. And I'm afraid that a lot of the comparative research which is being done at the moment on the basis of statistics, applied research, the benchmarking which is taking place in higher education and research, how much money does industry pay to government or the other way around, is not really that. But there are networks, I mean, particularly you see that at universities, regional networks, for example, life sciences kind of thing. And they typically do the macro figures, they typically leave out institutional side, the organizational side, if we call it probably the organizational development side, of how do you link society, or if you would like to, business and government, or business and university?
But I think there are different levels.
Yes.
There's an organizational level, there's an interpersonal, communicative level, and there's also the level of the content of the research. Dus dat is deze begeleidforschung. I don't know the English term, guided research, begeleidforschung, and that's what Stavros is doing in fact also. Yeah, that is begeleidforschung. It's doing research and looking over the shoulder of people. Yeah.
Why is it applied research?
Sorry?
Why is it applied research?
There used to be an expression action research.
Yeah.
Process.
Not applied.
No, begeleidforschung. Begeleidforschung. So there are practices developing, and as a researcher you look over the shoulder and you ask questions.
Action.
It used to be
called, I don't know whether it's
Yeah, actually maybe part of begeleidforschung. It depends on the role that the researcher is taking. I think it's interesting to compare, say, different, examples of begeleidforschung, this, say, guided research. And then ask yourself, and that's for me, I think, in terms of begeleidforschung, one of the most important questions, and is what kind of relationships are privileged? And when you contextualize, what relations with the context are privileged? Why do you ask questions about this relationship? I think that contextualization is making relationships between, say, the object of the research and the environment of it. Now, what kind of relations with the environment are put in focus? And what kind of relations are in the background? Yeah? And so the social construction of the environment, of the context, and the social construction of the internal relationships of your object of research. Yeah? Begeleidforschung is extremely interesting because there are
it's a bit evidence-based policies. I think today you would call it evidence-based policies.
Okay.
I think
I don't think so, because evidence-based policy and evidence-based medicine, it's derived from evidence-based medicine. So now we call it evidence-based policy. But it is different from begeleidforschung.
I think, I don't know what the purpose of such a research project is, but I'm thinking, for me the title would be, how could we have or trigger more evidence-based policies in Europe? That would be the normative flow, and then we could do a state-of-the-art assessment. How is the interaction between practice and theory growth in different European countries? What are the institutional patterns?
This would be possible.
Please follow the chair. No, but I have a list, so I'd ask you would like to the main point.
Yeah, I would like to put forward some suggestions for studying the relationship between practitioners and PA theories a bit more systematically. And I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel, but we can draw a lot on studies on knowledge utilization. There's already 25 years of research on that, and actually quite a nice research protocol. We used one recently in a study funded by UNESCO. They wanted to find out how policymakers across the world use social science research. And our research protocol was organized along basically 4 sets of variables, and several, I think, have already come up now. So one set of variables have to do with the characteristics of research, and then you have to look on one hand at content, on the other hand at form of research. For example, we know that when we discuss content of research, we know that practitioners tend to pick up technical research more quickly than research on redistributive issues. And that's not so easily picked up. As far as form is concerned, research is picked up more easily if you have recommendations, or if you have some kind of catchwords like Putnam had the social capital, but there are other examples of that. A second type of variables focuses on the interfaces between the two communities. Yeah? So you have people like Eric who are in fact transfer agents, or we also call them research brokers. So they kind of make research ready for use. But there are other things like steering committees where you jointly discuss research findings. So that would be kind of a second set of variables. Then you have many types of use, and that's also important to look at. You may use research for legitimation. You can use it for framing a policy definition, compare alternatives, maybe for evaluation. But research can also be used as means of empowerment, and we ourselves are writing a lot about governance. We haven't discussed so much the role of third actors. So research can also be used by NGOs or other groups as kind of empowerment mechanism. Just think of, for example, our ideas on participative democracy. They are picked up, strongly by NGOs, and they actually use the academic research in their relationship with policymakers and with practitioners. So there's many types of use too, and I think they should be mapped as well. And then fourthly, we shouldn't be talking, and I already mentioned it a little bit, talking about a relationship between two communities, but we should also look at the third community, so a whole set of actors who are out there and who also take part in the deliberation over or in knowledge utilization. We found, for instance, in recent case studies in Belgium where we compared knowledge utilization in Flanders, Brussels, and Toulouse, we found that if research was picked up by a third actor, it transferred much more quickly, and they would make it ready for use with their own means. They would use the press, the media, and often the researchers were no longer engaged afterwards in the debate, but the message was there and the research was utilized. So those are kind of four sets of variables that I think could support a research agenda. I also think that we need case studies for it if you really want to see how these variables are built in across the national. Some suggestions.
Really, of course, the goal. That's what I think. That's still a valid question. But immediately we jump again into the research. That's what we do, and we design that well. And I think we should think a little bit what kind of functions it would have. You can, for this kind of research, what perspective it to lead to lead to better. What is it? Evidence-based policies could be the same thing. It could also be. Is there something that can be said about what I defined as a new quality domain in which we have to find our standards and our definitions, and perhaps even performance or evaluation indicators could be a different application. I would be interested what could be the interesting goal, except from the high goal of policy-based, evidence-based policy, which is of course very much an academic and politically attractive, but not necessarily actually workable concept. What would be an interesting goal for practitioners to get?
What I was going to ask is, would you need to distinguish between sectors?
No, I'm not. I mean, you might want to look a little bit what could be done. I mean, in design of such a project, it's easy to stick. I mean, very well just now to design the research, then also to think about to what purpose should it contribute. What is it that you want? What is it that you?
Okay. But there could be significant
I'm more contextually, please, operationalized principle of what happens.
Well, maybe a fifth strand would be what came to mind when you were talking is, to my mind, is the research of Dutch Professor Rob Hoppe, who has a very interesting research program on the way scientific knowledge rationalizes or does not rationalize public policy, and in what context it can contribute to a more scientification of public policy, and in what context it is used politically, or is used to politicize public policy making process. It could be a fifth strand, and that came to mind with you.
It's exactly this what Robert Florence is saying in research protocol from UNESCO. But then we're always talking sectoral, substantive research, and what we're discussing here is something else. We were saying yesterday it's more generic knowledge and research on good governance. It's different from this policy substantive research.
But sorry, but surely, I mean, if you take an area like since the area you're working in, clearly scientific and technical advice is very important. I mean, it makes a great difference whether you take it or you don't take it. Then in other areas, and it's very obvious to anyone at this stage, maybe not in the past, but now it's obvious that all this ecological thing is very vital. So, and the mistakes have been made and so on. In another area, though, which might be something like administrative reform, or the structure of government, it's less apparent because this is something where governments normally don't like to have other people interfering. It's a thing we tend to discuss because we're in public administration.
This happens to be our field of expertise, and the substantive policy analysts, they're doing well, they cover this well, I wouldn't worry about them too much actually.
But that's what I wanted to know, whether you were going to...
The problems, of course, with public administration has been so sectoralized.
So it is public administration you want to look at?
We need to go to the substance, and then people say immediately, that means you have to become an environmentalist or an educational policy specialist. I personally don't believe that at all. I think that there's also, there are some very solid insights in supervisions, the control structures and the pitfalls of it, or in terms of the planning processes was just being described, and the pitfalls and how you design it. So that kind of good governance, we would call it, good administrative practices in the past, that I think is also one of the reasons that you would concentrate on. The people with the environmental knowledge, the people with they have set up those kinds of science and they usually that doesn't really work is that at any given moment they all go sector by sector, and when they meet or when the interaction needs to be organized, it doesn't work. And that is, at least in my opinion, something that the field of public administration should take care of in doing that by bringing in layers. We'll go back to that in a minute. I think when we discuss the paper of ink, how you transfer from one phase stage of the process into another. And those kind of more functional type of that would be my view of substance. At least that's what the lens is. Good governance, but that concept needs then to be a little bit more contextualized.
Very good. So you would look, for example, at how far there is learning across sectors, or things like that.
For example,
whether there are mechanisms.
That's what we would have to define that. I think that also you would have, in that sense, I agree. You would have to define a little bit more the substance of what the relationship and the dissemination of the learning is about, and I think that we need to develop some indicators on that.
I'm just thinking that you see, unless you're careful about that, it could be rather a huge task. I mean, an impossible task.
That's why researchable also as a practical doable thing. Yes. Yeah.
But an interesting one.
No, I think it's very much worth doing. I don't know to what extent it has been mapped to the field. There probably are some articles written about different countries, but not anything that...
I think there are frameworks with respect that you can use, just like that said, but I don't think that in this specific substantive area there's much research going on. So that could be exploratory, and that is something that could be handled because the criteria of rigor could be, which are usually very costly, could be dealt with in a different way.
But one thing I wanted to suggest is that maybe one should, that is where bodies like the OECD should be included.
For example.
Because I think there would have been influence on governments in that way, you know. I mean, at least to ask.
Well, we have connection with the World Bank, don't we?
Well, exactly. But all those bodies. When you get to Central and Eastern Europe, you have to do that because the whole thing is there. But I'm thinking in terms of Western Europe now. I'm assuming that's what I think. To begin with, you'd want to be. Well, again, you need to control.
Well, it was interesting because it was what Elke said. She discovered a huge separation, particularly in let's forget about it. There's no Central and Eastern Europe anymore as far as the new European Union is concerned. It's now one big game. I mean, that's going to change a number of discussions. For example, we talk about EPAN and BISPC already, but what will be the new relationship there? Because suddenly it's not a matter of old and new member states, it's all the same game. But still, there play some factors in there. We were yesterday discussing this morning on the bus how still very old cultural differences between old parties and new young talents. They occupy different institutions in academia as well as in and they don't want to communicate. The new generation does not want to communicate that much to the old leftovers of the communist system, so to speak. And those kind of things, I think, should be included. What we did that's correct so far is simply take examples from our Western, but I would like to identify blockage like this in the communication channels that could actually be very interesting to bring in new developments there. How do they bypass these kind of blockades that you still have in the system, which are not only
Well, that we call to attention also the work done many years ago about on the code, on usable knowledge, all that discussion about, well, yeah, professors think they're great and they know everything, but maybe there are a few things we didn't know. And maybe the interaction between interested parties and so on create just as much good usable knowledge as all these isolated information from the average knowledge. So there's the concepts, the understandings, and so on to build on. Because I don't imply that this is necessarily always so today and everywhere, but at least as a bunch of interesting things to use. Yes.
I still haven't come quite to grips with what the purpose of such a study could be, but I think that would be very important. Should it just be descriptive?